Jeff, I don't have a lot of time. We're stuck in a time loop. Just say the first word that comes to your mind. 3, 2, 1. Pomegranate.
Penis.
What?
Oh.
I have a lot of concerns right now.
Welcome in to the Bro Force Squad podcast, where we're just a bunch of bros drinking beer and watching TV and movies. I'm your host, the Mayor Jeff Hornacek. Thank you guys so much for checking us out. This is our review of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 7, Episode 9, titled, As I Have Always Been. Joining me, as always, is my partner in crime, the mad scientist, Brian Banner, to review this as we do all of our TV episodes on the 4 Bro Force Squad criteria, the acting, the story, our favorite scene, and then any theories or questions we have going forward. First off, shout out to Trend Pimp, as always, off the top. Ryan, quite a different episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. here today. What did you think of the acting and cast?
Honestly, this is one of the best well-rounded episodes I think that the entire cast has put in. We've got, holy fuck. Sorry, there's a big-ass bug crawling up my sleeve. One of the best performances that as a collective cast we've put together. Everybody knew their role. Nobody tried to do too much. Nobody did too little. Everybody was right in that perfect wheelhouse. Obviously, very Chloe Bennett and Phil Clark Phil, whatever the fuck his name is. I get it wrong every time.
But
I just want to call him Phil.
He is Phil Coulson. He would probably even tell you that. He's like, I don't go by Clark at home anymore, unless we're broke.
Right. Very heavy on them, and I thought that was it's going to sound weird to say a breath of fresh air, but we really haven't gotten that in several seasons, and we know how close those two characters are, and especially were early on in the series. So kind of calling back to them and playing on their relationship throughout the episode and how they did this episode was really cool to see. And then I'll leave the low-hanging fruit to you, because there is one person that absolutely fucking crushed it.
Yeah. I mean, before we get into them, though, you bring up a good point. This show, especially in the last season, has done such a great job of incorporating a really fun framing device of time travel. And they've also done a really good and fun job of incorporating characters from all the previous seasons and story arcs, like revisiting them. But this was an episode where we didn't really have any of the bells and whistles. It was just the core Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., literally trapped on the Zephyr. And the cast is so strong and has such good rapport that in and of itself just excels. Like, it reaches the characters in the episode to a level that you don't need gimmicks. And I don't, that's probably not the best word to use, because I actually have liked what this season has done, the way it's introduced new characters. But you can just give us the good old gang that we've had since basically like season 3, and they're just incredible at these roles. I mean, it's just so much fun to watch.
Yeah, it's a really, really hard thing to do, to get a group of characters that 7 seasons in, and I know this hasn't been the core group all 7 seasons. You know, you have some that leave and some that come back, but we've been with this team here for half the series, I'd say. Pretty close to it. And they still got it, and I don't need anybody else. But you can also throw somebody new in there like Sousa, and it works. I mean, they just have that perfect chemistry.
But even he feels like an old friend because of Agent Carter, you know?
Yeah.
Clark Gregg, I will say, for best scene, I'll talk about him. I have to give a quick shout out to Elizabeth Henstridge as Gemma. That scene where they remove the implant from her neck, I mean, to pull that emotion out of her, I mean, God, it's just, the cast they have on here, these people are all going to have great careers after this show. Chloe Bennett, I just wrote down, she's grown so much, she could carry her own show. I mean, she is this lead dog in this episode, and she just owns her character so well. She has so much fun with it, but she can also pull on that emotional
I
threat
know
to
this
chase to.
is obviously it can't happen, but if we were recasting Rey from the Star Wars sequel trilogy, I would put her in there first and foremost, and I think she could do better than Daisy Ridley.
Wow. Hot take. I'll table that because we have to get to our main man, Joel Stoffer, who
God.
plays Enoch. And in Theories and Questions, we can talk about if this is actually the end of Enoch. But, I mean, talk about a five-tool player. Banner, he made us laugh this episode. He made us cry. He led a mystery arc for his character. He had a huge twist. He had physicality. I mean, he just pulled every tool
He
out of
did
the
it
tool
all.
set today.
He did it all.
And to do all of that while having to play an android, I mean, I can't give enough kudos to his performance.
Yeah, I don't know if he is eligible for an Emmy in any capacity, but he deserves one. My God, is he just he like you said, he can do it all. He was mad, he was angry, he was scared, he was compassionate, he was funny, he was caring, he was vulnerable. All of that in 45-minute show where he's probably only in 20 of it.
Yeah, Enoch is really not even a main part of the time loop until about halfway through when Daisy and Coulson really start to figure out what's going on.
Just absolute stud.
All right, that segues us right into the story. So according to the TV Time app, the synopsis is, a time storm ravages the Zephyr, propelling it towards destruction while simultaneously forcing Daisy and Coulson to relive their failed attempts to save the team. So, for lack of a better term, it's a trope that movies and shows do, and I think it works well. It's like the Groundhog Day framing and narrative device of repeating the same day over and over, but it's always fun because you have the knowledge of what happens previously. So this is my favorite episode of the season. I think this worked really, really well. I actually think this would have been a cool movie to do with the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, I could have done another 40 minutes of this thing. So what did you think of the story we got here? Because, again, we've been time traveling all season. This was unlike anything they've done thus far.
It was a great episode. I mean, it was pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Like you said, we are trapped in a time loop. We got to get out of it. And we've got, 15-minute windows to do it in, to learn all this stuff. I don't think it was my favorite of the season. I think I like the 50s noir one better. Just with Coulson narrating it, kind of being that overtone. Not to diminish this one at all, because this is a second. And I know it's just recency bias, but this is probably my third favorite episode in recent memory, behind the Fear and Loathing on Planet Kitson and the 50s Noir episode. So great company, just wasn't quite there as far as the other ones. I thought it was so clever how they did this. Now, traditionally, movies and shows that are like this, they're very, very comedy heavy, and, they're funnier than this was. They were able to take something.
It just lends itself to a lot of comedic situations.
Right. And I think that this one did a good job of going, yeah, okay, look, this is funny, but look, shit's still real. And kind of kept us grounded in that seriousness of the situation that they're in.
I think it just shows you how this show can work in so many different tonal arenas. Like, think about the 80s episode we had with Deke and Mac, which played, I mean, they had some emotional beats in it, but that played as basically a straight-up comedy, like cheesy 80s slasher flick. And then we get the next episode, like, explaining what the rest of the team was doing and sort of all that. And then this one comes right back to a very serious feel to it, even though, again, it could have been funny. And I think it just shows you this show knows its characters, and it knows where to put them in places where they'll succeed. Because at this time, based on the stakes, I mean, this worked for me for an emotional episode.
I would agree with that. I think that the writers know what they're doing here. They have shown, and they've earned the right to. Okay, so let me back up a second. This episode did a great job of showing us how much these characters trust each other. And they earned it. They didn't have to tell us. They didn't have to have Mac fighting with Daisy going, oh, I don't believe you. That's ridiculous. What are you talking about? And her having to figure out how to convince him that she's right. She just straight up said, look, we're in a time loop. This is why. This is what we need to do. And everybody said, okay, I'm in.
I also loved how disappointed Deke was that he didn't get to. That she was like, Deke's gonna break the bad news, spinning down the drain. He's like, I kind of was really looking forward to
Yeah.
saying that line to everyone. Oh well.
And again, he's someone else. I know we didn't talk about him in cast, but he didn't do too much. He didn't fuck it up, and I think that's a really big, important thing to point out for him.
Yeah. All right. Anything else, or can we move on to best scene?
Only other thing, how did you feel about Sousa and Daisy kissing? Or is that a theories and questions?
No, it's not
situation?
really. We had talked earlier about the possibility of the show shipping them, putting them in a relationship together. And obviously it's met with mixed emotions. Daisy has had some important relationships, both with Lincoln and Grant Ward on this show that didn't work out. And of course, Sousa, we know because of his relationship with Agent Carter in the show. So I'm sure people have some preconceived notions on whether they should get together. In this context, I thought it was actually kind of heartfelt, and I didn't really mind it. But you don't really think it's going to last, right? Not necessarily going to blow up in their face, but
I don't think it's ever going to be mentioned again. I think Daisy knows it's there. I think Daisy tried it on and goes, it didn't quite fit right. Sousa has no idea that this happened, right? Because they failed again between the kiss and them actually saving the day.
correct.
So I think it was a opportunity for them to see maybe another tryout for a spinoff show, like you were saying last episode. Can they work together, and can we go down a romantic storyline with them? And this kind of started that pathway.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything. I think, like you said, it was a nice device in the show to where they can say, we want to show you this, but it's also not going to have a repercussion or a
It's
lasting
not
impact.
important.
All right, best scene. There were a couple emotional scenes in this one, so tough to pick from. The one that I was going to go with was when Coulson's LMD is talking about how this time loop was basically a metaphor for his life, having to watch all of the people he cares about most die over and over again, and how much it hurts and eats away at him. And that scene, you could tell, was kind of Clark Gregg saying goodbye to the fans in a few ways and referencing the lineage and the history Coulson has had. And the emotion, the raw emotion he had right there. I mean, I know he's supposed to be an LMD, but we're basically watching like Phil Coulson right there pour his heart out to Daisy. Just basically saying like, I've had to see you guys die so many times and it doesn't get easier. And then she says, well, we actually lost you and you got to die first, so you didn't have to see any of us suffer. Yeah. And he was like, oh, that's actually a good point. I just thought that was so well written and so poignant, and it comes from such a place of like earnesty that we feel as fans.
Yeah, I don't think they had to do a whole lot of acting there. I mean, obviously, yes, they had to memorize the lines and everything, but this was the beginning of the end. I mean, this is episode 9 of 13. Like, we're down to the wire here, and so the actors, I think, know that, and they didn't have to act as much as they would in other scenes.
Yeah, it basically felt like Chloe Bennett talking to Clark Gregg.
Yes.
So what'd you have?
Was that your best scene?
That was my best scene.
So my best scene, the way I looked at the whole episode was the entire episode was kind of just one long scene because we keep repeating the same thing over and over again. So it's hard to pick out a best scene in that. And then we get the last 8 to 10 minutes, which is all Enoch. And that speech that he did as soon as everybody left and they went to go fix the hyperdrive or time drive or whatever it's called. And he goes, I don't feel good. And he's talking to Daisy and Coulson about how he's been alive forever and he knows what being alone is like, but feeling lonely is different. And now he has these people that care about him, and Coulson and Daisy telling him, we're with you to the end. Like, you are a great friend. You're not just some robot tool that we learned about. Mm-hmm. That to me was, again, it came from a point of earnesty that it took him all these years and this team for him to learn what love is and learn what being a part of something that's bigger than yourself is.
His character arc is so unexpected to me. Like, when we first met him, I never could have guessed in a million years that we would have the attachment to him that we do, or that he would end up having the staying power with this team that he does. But it has worked so perfectly. Yeah,
and you can just tell how much he learned from being a part of that team as a person, we'll say. And you can they kind of touch back on all these moments, like when him and Fitz were best friends, and how when he was stuck in the was it the 50s that or the 30s that it just he realized what it was like to be alone because he didn't have these people that he cared for.
Yeah.
It was such a powerful it was a powerful full scene, and it kind of reinforced what Clark Gregg was going through as well, or what Coulson was going for in Your Best Scene.
Yeah, it was kind of weird because those two scenes are sort of similar when you look at them at face value, but they're also so different. All right, you ready to move on to theories and questions?
All right, let's do it.
All right, so I guess the first thing as a question that I want to ask is this actually the end of Enoch? I mean, there's 4 episodes left. Do you think this is a fitting send-off for him? Or do you think there's a way to bring him back?
No, I think this is a good way to send him off. He sacrificed himself to project them onto the quote-unquote final battle of this season here. What he can add as far as, because you got to think they have to close out the storylines of Coulson, Daisy, May, who have all been, and Gemma, and essentially Fitz, even though we haven't seen him, who have all been there since day one. Then you have Mac, who's been there since season 2, season 3. Those are some big heavy hitters that you have to close out. So I think they've got to start closing some of these out earlier rather than later. Enoch is an easy one to get out of the way. I unfortunately don't think they'll completely close out Deke, but I do think this was a good way with that speech to send Enoch out.
So in that same speech, Enoch makes the proclamation that the team is basically about to embark on their final mission together. Mm-hmm. So what do you make of that?
I have no idea. I think that maybe it's... Okay, no, I do have an idea. Just came to me. What he is saying is that they are no longer going to be a team, because right now they are presumably in the past to where they came from. Eventually they're going to catch back up to 2012 maybe, when the Avengers are.
Yep.
Maybe a little before that. They're eventually going to catch up to that. So I think what he's saying is like the team has to end because you're coming back to where you started.
I agree. I actually kind of have a theory that ties into that. I'm not sure exactly how or why, but they are going to meet back up in 2012. Sousa is going to go work for the NYPD like he did for the attack on New York. They're going to presume other roles in the real world, and somehow the series will end when Loki stabs Coulson in the Avengers, and there will be some tie-in to the Chromicons, and that'll end it. And instead of going to Tahiti and all that, it'll basically come full circle, and then it'll basically have a tie-in back to the movies.
Are we getting Hiddleston back as a cameo?
Possibly, but I think they could just do it with the footage that they currently have.
I agree.
So I think there's a couple ways they could do it. Doesn't necessarily even have to be like with the Chitauri or Loki or any of that, but Sousa getting his prosthetic leg, I mean, that's where they're sending us, dude. It's going to tie right back into basically where the show jumped off, which was his death in the Avengers, and then all the liberties that they took with the storyline and time travel and all that will basically be righted. It'll just be the perfect bow to put on this thing. And the real death of Coulson, and it will still be just as significant, if not more, than it was when we saw him make it on the big screen in 2012.
Love it.
I don't have all the pieces to the puzzle yet, but I think I have the outline of the puzzle, which is the first part you do. And then you start building in the middle of it.
Yeah. Yeah, you got the 4 corners.
I had two other things, but they're nothing major, so I'll let you get what you got.
I have a small theory on... So that last scene that we got was actually Nathaniel, Malik, and Cora, and he's teaching Cora how to perfect her powers, right? Mm-hmm. I called it last week or the week before, whenever we met Cora, she is Daisy's sister.
You did.
I think that scene right there validated that.
Well, he even said it. He's like, wait till
your little sister. He didn't necessarily...
But he referenced her powers. He was like, your little sister can push things with her powers or something like that. It was
Yeah,
based on, when I heard that, I was like 100% he's referring to Daisy.
that's what I thought too. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page, and suck it, I called it.
Which leads me to believe, sorry, real quick, because this ties into that. In the timeline when they went back to and met Korra and Jiaying, Daisy hadn't been born yet, right?
Correct.
So Korra is like 16 years older than Daisy, which again, Jiaying is basically like immortal. But I guess Korra would have had to have died in the current time or the previous timeline before, because when they went to Afterlife, Korra was never there, right?
Not to my knowledge, but that doesn't mean that she isn't like locked up in some like prison in the mountain or something.
I guess that's true, because Jiaying was clearly afraid of her.
Right.
Okay.
And I think that Daisy in the coming episodes in some form is going to have to choose between her real family being Jiaying and Korra and maybe even her dad and her family, which is the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Right.
She's going to have to pick which ones do I save, which one is more important, who has been there for me. I think she's going to have a lot of family emotions because remember when we met Daisy or Sky, whatever you want to call her back then, she was basically an orphan living on the street at, 17 years old maybe?
Yeah, she was like the head of that hacker organization, which was really just her, right?
The Red Tide or Riptide or something. Rising Tide? The Rising Tide.
Sounds right. But it was really just her, right? And people thought it was like some crazy hacker.
I think so. Yeah, I think for the most part it was just her.
One thing, I don't know if you were going to mention this. You had a theory on Fitz that you texted me. I'm not sure if you had it written down to share with everybody. Do you remember this?
No, but I do have a theory on Fitz. I think Fitz is dead.
Yeah, that was it.
Okay. Fitz is definitely dead. Gemma, in order to save the rest of the team, that's the real reason that she has the memory block. And when they removed it in that one loop, and she started to cry at the end right before they
bawled her eyes out. It was not like I just saw the end of Jerry Maguire. It was like, holy shit.
Yeah, it was my soulmate, the love of my life, is dead and sacrificed himself to save me so that I can save our friends and our family.
So if that's the case, I gotta ask you straight up.
Deke can't exist then, right?
Probably not. But do we even see, I hate to even ask this, do we see Ian Castiger again in Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
I don't know the answer to that. I want to say yes because he deserves.
He really does, man.
He deserves his goodbye, and we deserve his goodbye. I mean, when was the last time that we even saw him? Really, he got captured by the Chromicons, right?
I believe he disappears at like the very end of season 6. But again, that's all a little bit. Trent Pym would have to correct us on that.
Yeah, we haven't seen him in so long, and with what they're doing, like Enoch, if this is in fact his last episode, gets this super heartfelt, emotional 5-minute monologue, and he's only been with us since season 5. Fitz has literally been with us from day 1.
And maybe there's something we don't know.
There's got to be something.
Maybe DeCastiger had a scheduling issue and he couldn't be part of this, or he didn't know they were getting renewed, so he picked up another project. And they basically said, "Okay, well, we'll use Enoch as sort of his fill-in and give him, an emotional send-off." And if that's the case, I mean, I understand it. I emotionally was not ready to not have Fitz at all this season.
Same.
And what you're saying would be just soul crushing for the character of Gemma, because God, how long have we just wanted her and Fitz to just be able to fucking live their lives together?
That's why I think maybe we'll get him for one episode, because even if he was unavailable with another project, like they'd figure out a way to get him just one episode. So they wrote this out. She doesn't remember, and we're going to get a flashback memory, or eventually she is going to have the block permanently removed. And we're going to find out what actually happened, and we'll get his emotional send-off then. I hope that's the case.
Last question I had, and again, we do not watch the next time on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but it's sort of a two-tiered question. Where did they jump to And is it in the same timeline that Malik and Korra are in, or are they going to go to a future, even if it's like 3 months later? And I asked this last week, I think, where Malik and Korra have already sort of had a foothold on either Afterlife or extended that out into the real world, and they're like wreaking havoc now.
I like to think that my theory of Malik being the destroyer of worlds at some point is going to come into play, just because I like being right.
Who doesn't? Yeah.
I wonder if maybe this next episode, whatever time they're in, excuse me, I don't know, we'll say 95, just because that seems to kind of be the trend that we're moving in. And they have to fight at Afterlife. They haven't come out yet, and they're stopping Nathaniel and Korra from coming out of Afterlife, and that's when the world gets destroyed. Then they jump to 2075 or whatever it was with the Kree and tie up some little bow on that. Then they can maybe has something to do with the monoliths is going to get them back to 2012.
Because it was really ambiguous, or at least nothing noticeable to like in that last scene with Malik and Korra to tell us how much time has passed. He's not like, oh, the Giants are playing the A's in the World Series. All right, Korra, back to you. Not like, what? So it could be 3 days. It could be 3 years. Who knows? Korra, this is like a sort of like an old, not an old, but it's like something costume designers do to show the passage of time. Korra's wearing like a much different color palette. Like she's clearly full on evil. So we're meant to think like, okay, well, at least enough time has gone by to where she's been successfully brainwashed to upgrade her whole wardrobe to villain.
Yeah, but she was pretty much buying in 100%. So I wouldn't even be convinced that it can't be a month or two in the future.
Sure. Right.
I'd like to think it's longer than that, but
yeah, I'd like to think Korra isn't like that easily manipulated, but also she's kind of spent her whole life being told she's a piece of shit. So
yeah, I just want them to continue to move up and get us connected to 2008 even, when we first meet Coulson.
Yeah, God, that'd be cool.
Like
him at like the Tony Stark banquet.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. There's a lot that they can do with Chromacon still coming back, because they can literally be anybody. So they can put them easily fit them into an Iron Man or a Thor or obviously the Avengers.
And they still have the plot device, if they want it, of Sybil somehow basically being like omniscient. She's like to Malik what the sports almanac was to Biff in Back to the Future 2. She kind of gives him the leg up on the future events that are about to happen.
Yeah, I could buy that too.
All right, that's all I had. What do you have, Banner?
That's all I've got.
All right, well, we got 4 of these left, and it's going to be a wild ride. If they're anything like this episode, it's going to be a hell of a finish.
Are we getting a 2-hour season finale or series finale?
That is
We've got to, right?
That's a trend pimp question, but yeah, I hope so, man. I don't know. This is one of those things that like, it's just so much fun every week that I'm not really ready for the end. And it's not one of those shows where it's like, oh man, it has to have. It's not like Lost where you're like, dude, you better have some big fucking ending. I just don't want to say goodbye to these characters.
Yeah, it's a very unique situation to be in, because I love these characters and I love this show, but I'm not nitpicky and thinking about every little detail like you would on like a Breaking Bad or a Game of Thrones or even a Westworld.
Yeah.
But it's also not like No Story, where it's, like I don't know, some sort of comedy sitcom.
It's not like Seinfeld.
Yeah, it's not like Seinfeld or like what's like a King of Queens or something like that. Like it's in this happy medium right in the middle. I don't know that there's a show like it.
No. And it's been able to cross so many different genres. Like there's some episodes where it's just like Fear and Loathing on Planet Kitson we always talk about. That was a straight up comedy episode. And then ones like this, complete drama, and it just works week to week. And it's kind of hard to describe.
You also have those episodes where just 100% action and blowing shit up.
Right. And those, of course, work as well.
Yeah.
All right. For the mad scientist, Brian Banner, I'm the mayor, Jeff Hornacek, and we are the Bro Force Squad podcast. Thank you guys so much for checking us out. Please follow us on Twitter at Bro4Squad. Subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If you type in Bro Force Squad as 3 separate words, you can find us in all those places. Check out everything that we post on our website, bro4squad.com. Till next week, Banner and I have to get out of this time loop. Or a time vortex?
I don't know. But if I told you we were in a time loop, how many times would it take me telling you for you to believe me?
How drunk am
I? Like 5.5 in.
Second time.